Danny's friends get him to the ops center, and they activate its emergency release, making it change forms into a jet and fly away, activating the autopilot. We then cut to Valerie having grabbed her ghost hunting gear and spotted Freak Show while trying to hunt down Danny, flying down and overhearing him talking about a plan to grab their families to get the gems back. She then introduces herself, telling them that she knew where their families lived. Freak Show then told Lydia that they may have just made a friend. Danny and his friends were being chased by the guys in white, so he tried to make the whole thing invisible, Cujo trying to help, copying what Danny was doing, and letting them get away, though not before the guys in white put some sort of tracking device onto it before disengaging. We see that Danny was struggling and soon dropped down, breathing heavily before collapsing. Freak Show appears on a call screen with Cujo growling at him, and Tucker asked what they want. Hadn't they ruined their lives enough? To which the former ringmaster told them not quite. They were to bring him the gems, or else. Sam questions or else what, and Freak Show proceeds to show that he had all of their families. Then told them that they had 3 days to bring him the gems in exchange for their safety. After that, there's no guarantee for their safety. We then cut from Danny and his friends to Freak Show and Danny and Sam and Tucker's families. Both Sam's and Tucker's families were blaming Fenton, saying that it's their fault. Maddie tells Jack to calm down. The whole thing about Danny being a ghost boy has her just as confused as he is. Jack says that they love Danny. Why would he keep it a secret? Though Jazz points out the two of them are ghost hunters. Why do they think he kept it secret? Though maybe he hadn't been keeping it secret, and reminded them about the times his eyes had changed colors. Jack hits his head against the bars, saying that he should have known something strange was up, especially when Danny was skipping detention. Freak Show walks over towards them, saying that their kids have 3 days to bring him the stones, to which Jazz questions that they were just gonna sit around until he gets some rocks. Not much of a bad guy. Freak Show gets mad hearing that, and Jazz points out he doesn't even have power. Technically, Lydia is a lot stronger than him. Freak Show then yells that he will not be upstaged by ghosts, and made a staff appear, pointing the end of it at Jazz, telling her that he's been studying up while in prison. Putting things into practice is just something that he hasn't had the chance to do. Jazz questioned if he was jealous much, though Freak Show says that he loves ghosts and had worked with them all his life. Raising an eyebrow, Danny's sister then reminds him that he sought to control them. Sounds like ghost envy to her. He yells that he doesn't have ghost envy, and that he never controlled Lydia even when he had the orb that controlled ghosts. She was the exception. Jack questioned what exactly made her so special, and Freak Show moved the staff from being pointed at Jazz, and instead leaned against it, telling them that she was the love of his afterlife, as well as would have been... You know what? That's not important. Danny wakes up with his head in Sam's lap, questioning what happened, and so they fill him in and tell him that they'd set a course for the closest place, which was Sam's goth convention, since they didn't know where he was thinking about when he hid the gem. Nodding, he told them that he was thinking about the plumber's base in Bellwood. With a nod, they landed the ops center jet down into the Nevada desert, seeing that shit got weird. Everything was teddy bears and happy flowers and sunshine, and this was so wrong. Sam was all for killing their way through the teddy bears, but Danny says that he didn't think they would have to, asking if they could please have the gem of form, which they handed over willingly, and Danny used it to return everything back to how it should be before putting it into the thermos. The guys in white appear again, and Danny goes ghost before blasting their tanks, grabbing one of them by the barrel and started trying to swing it slowly, causing it to lift up as he did so, slamming it upside down onto the other tank, and faced himself, Sam, and Tucker into the jet before setting course for the second gem location and flying off again. Cutting back to Jazz writing information down, with Freak Show ranting about living in the shadow of ghosts all his life. His parents loved them more than him. The audience loved them more than him. Deep down, he thinks he may even love ghosts more than himself. Sighing, both he and Jazz sighed, saying that sometimes they wished they were ghosts, which helped Freak Show to have a little more respect for her, since she seemed to understand him. Getting to the convention, Danny says that it doesn't seem like anyone has triggered the gem of fantasy as they walk inside, and see 3 people being changed into their costumes. Danny asking Tucker if those were heroes or villains. Tucker tells him villains, and so he told Cujo to get the kitty while he dealt with the other 2, to which his ghost dog then barked, still in puppy form, and growled at the Catgirl character. In response to their barking, they changed into a more beast-like humanoid form, letting out a roar like a big cat trying to scare them away, but Cujo grew into his attack dog form, being about 3 times their size, and then growled at them face to face before barking and making them flee as he chased after them, with Danny fighting the rock monster and the samurai characters. After beating them, Danny has them return to normal, before heading back to the jet with Tucker, Sam, and Cujo. But the jet was then blasted by the guys in white. They were pointing weapons at Danny and his friends when something went off in their ear. They tried to argue with whomever was speaking to them. There was something about plumbers and some sort of orders. This annoyed them as they sighed, putting down their blasters, telling the group that they were free to go under plumber direct orders. They were to take a jet to Bellwood. They raised an eyebrow but didn't look a gift horse in the mouth as he and his friends fly off in the jet, getting to the plumber base and meeting up with Rook, Blanco, and Albedo, who mentioned something about a gem bringing their new proto-truck to life. But they'd managed to subdue them and lock up the gem. Danny told them that he needed it to get back their families, to which Rook said not to worry as the guys in the lab were making a copy of the gem to use instead. Tucker asked how long it would take to make copies of the other 2 also, having a twisted sort of idea in his head. Meeting up where they were supposed to, Danny hands over the thermos and tells the former rigmaster to let everyone go. They had a deal. Freak Show then tells them that they should know better and put the gems into the gauntlet and began pressing them in sequence. Danny blasted Freak Show from behind after he'd turned his back to them, saying that he does know better, which is why they had some friends help them out. As Albedo shows up in the form of Diamond Head and slams his fist into the ground, making crystals that shoot up around Freak Show, though he says that won't work, before trying to use one of the gems individually, finding that it didn't work. Questioning why exactly it wasn't working, Danny then told him fake gems for a fake ringleader, before phasing through the crystals and pulling the gauntlet off of Freak Show, replacing them with the real ones. With Sam capturing Lydia when she tried to attack using the Fenton thermos. Danny, Sam, and Tucker then had a little chat about what they think they should do about their families, and they'd agreed to erase their memories too, because it was for the best. Nodding, he then erased the memories of everyone except those that knew his identity prior to the reality trip event, before returning home and handing over the gauntlet to Rook, suggesting that they destroy that thing, which he agreed and threw into the air before he blasted at it with his proto-tool, while at the same time Albedo as Heat Blast and Danny also blasted it, breaking it apart and destroying the gems in the process. Remembering that they set everything back, Danny said that they should be getting ready for their trip, though Sam and Tucker say that they'd pass. They already had one cross-country trip together, they couldn't handle another, to which Danny then nodding, says he thought they'd tell him that, so what about a different one? Our half-ghost then pulled out those papers Rook gave them a while back, and looking at each other for a moment, they then nodded, saying that they were in.